Well, hey there, Bright Light, and welcome to this week's episode of Urban Shamanism with me, Steffi Funk, where I give you the sacred tools for an extraordinary life in the concrete jungle. With that, let's dive right into this week's episode, which is one of my absolute favorite topics of all time. It's the universal language of knowing without question that you're on the right path, or knowing which path to take if you don't know, and it's called synchronicity. So today I'm going to walk you through the 6 different types of synchronicity so that you can be ultra versed in this universal language and know for sure when you are on the right path or which path to take. But first, I want to tell you a little personal story about how synchronicity showed up in my life on my path to my divine purpose. So it all started with an Ayurvedic reading back in 2011. Now in 2011, I didn't know which way was up. I felt so lost in life. I knew that I wasn't doing my heart's desire, but I didn't know what that was. And in one of my many attempts to figure that out, I went to see an Ayurvedic astrologist. That's really neither here nor there. It was a 60-minute reading. He said many things in that reading, but one thing stuck out in that reading, and he wouldn't even remember that he said it to me. And what he said was, you will be a businesswoman by day and a shaman by night. Now, mind you, he probably didn't even mean this literally. He probably meant like you will be a healer or you will work with energy. But I heard that word, shaman, and it reverberated in my bones. It was like, shaman, shaman, shaman. And I was like, what is that? And I had never, I'd heard of shaman, I'd heard of shamanism, but like not really. I'd been on a spiritual path for a long time. And it was like in that moment, I knew I needed to know everything about whatever this was. So that's the first thing to know about synchronicity, is that it often feels irrational, okay? So if it doesn't make any sense, but somehow it catches your awareness, don't discount that. That's important information. So then I just knew, like, the seed had been planted, but I didn't know any shamans. I didn't know anyone studying shamanism. So it was just several years later before I started to embark on the path. But what caused me to actually embark on it was there was a shamanic retreat coming up in Peru. And wouldn't you know it, my mother-in-law in Colorado and my best friend in Chicago separately both told me about the retreat within like the same 12-hour period. And that may not seem like much to you, but mind you, Peru is a very big country and it has a lot of shamans. So the fact that out of nowhere, my mother and my best friend who don't even know each other, my mother-in-law and my best friend who don't even know each other, they do now, but they didn't then, told me about the same exact retreat. And it was one of those moments where it's like, right? I felt it. It was like reverberation down my spine and I knew I needed to go. And what's really weird is like it was a 3-week retreat and I was a dual business owner with a toddler at home, so it didn't make any sense, but I knew based on that synchronicity I had to go. Well, I followed universe's language. I went and doors started flying open in the shamanic realm. So as soon as I got back, I got notified through another synchronicity about a 1-year program that was coming up, and it was a deep dive shamanic training with a man named Jose Stevens and his wife Lena and his daughter Anna. And they have an organization called the Power Path, and this was a very intense 1-year training. So I was really hesitant about it. It was going to take a lot of investment on my part, time and resources to really do it, right? Mind you, I still had 2 businesses and a toddler at home. And so I decided I would make the decision on August 15th. It was like when they needed to know by, so August 15th. Well, I was seeing a client that day. I was a naturopath before, and I saw a client, and we were talking about spirituality and just generically spirituality, and we were both saying how much we love it. And he said, I love spirituality. I'm currently reading this fabulous spirituality book. Mind you, he didn't say shamanism book. We're just talking spirituality. And I said, oh, really? What book? Because I love spirituality books. And he said, it's called The Power Path by Jose Stevens. Right? I knew in that moment I needed to do the 1-year training. He was reading a book by the exact author who was running the 1-year training that I was thinking about and that I was supposed to make a decision on that day. Clear, right? Super clear. I knew that the universe was speaking to me. So fast forward, this training had 5 meetings across 5. We were actually cross country, right? We were in Mexico. We were in all these different lands. It was 5 meetings across 1 year. Well, the day before I left for the first training, on the side of my house, I saw for the first time in my whole life the beautiful bright green body of a katydid. And I just knew that she was there to bless my journey. And of course, I looked it up, and she has this really high, fine vibration, almost angelic. And she signified the 5 stages of metamorphosis, right? Crazy. 5 meetings, 5 stages of metamorphosis. And I just felt so blessed by that. But here's where it gets really weird. Fast forward a year, I was leaving for the last meeting, the 5th meeting, hadn't ever seen a katydid before or since. And who shows up on the side of my house the day before I leave for the 5th and last meeting? The katydid. I literally cried in blessing. Like, it was just such a beautiful completion and such confirmation that I was indeed on the right path. And that's just a few of the many, many, many synchronicities that continue to show up for me to this day. Like, if I'm, having a hard time, all of a sudden I'll see a hawk in a really weird place, and I'll just know that that hawk is saying, stay the course, you're on the right path, right? So you've probably experienced something like this. And now I want to get into what are the 6 different types of synchronicities, the main types, so that you can be really aware of how these are showing up in your life, so that you can use them as really incredible decision-making tools and reassurances from the universe. So the first one is animal allies, as I mentioned, with the katydid or the hawk. And you'll just know that they're for you. It's like you feel it in your heart. Often it will show up as an unusual animal sighting, or for example, I got stung by a scorpion. That was a really in my face animal ally that showed up for me while I was on the shamanic path. And actually was a huge blessing. I did another video on it if you want to watch it. It's called I Kissed a Scorpion, and I liked it. Check it out. So a lot of times it will feel like unusual, or like no one else will have seen it, but you will. Like it just feels like something a little magical about it, right? You just know that that animal is there for you. The second is coincidences. So as I mentioned, like with the man who was reading the book that was written by the same author as was running the 1-year shamanic training program. So coincidences are never coincidences. Synchronicity for sure. The third is seeing certain numbers, or like angel numbers, like 222, 333, 444, or just a certain series of numbers over and over again, like 1208, and you just see it over and over and over again. And all those numbers have meanings, and you can look them up. Google is a great resource, or you can just check in with your heart. What does it feel like it means to you? Another one is hearing things in 3s. So for example, if someone tells you about a really great book they read, and then someone else tells you about a great book, and then the third person tells you about the great book, and they're all the same 3 books, that's a really good sign you should read that book. It's got something in it for you. So again, just really pay attention when things show up for you in 3s. Another is precognition, and this is where like you have like a thought pops in your head and then it happens. Like you think of a friend and then they call you. Pay attention to what that friend is saying on the phone. They probably have a message for you. And then finally, dreams. So dreams are another really great source of synchronicity. Pay attention to your dreams. I know recently I became really good friends with another healer, and the night before we ever met for the first time, we both had the same exact dream. So that was a really good sign to me that this relationship was one that would be fruitful for both of us, and that we were, really meant to come together at this point in our lives and our journeys. So with that, I hope that gives you some idea of how to pay more attention to synchronicity in your life and know with confidence that you are on the right path, or if you're not clear, to know which path to take. And now that we've done a video on it, it's very likely some synchronicities will show up synchronistically for you this week. So I'd love to hear what they are. Here's your weekly inner shaman practice. Really pay attention to the universe. It can't speak to you in clear language, so it uses its own language to speak, which is synchronicity. So really be ultra aware of how the universe is trying to communicate with you. Because, dear one, you have a very divine purpose, and the universe really wants you to know what that is. And I can't wait to find out how your simple awareness starts to show up in your life and bring you ever closer to the divine path of your life. So with that, have a wonderful week. Let me know what shows up for you, and I will see you next week with another episode of Urban Shamanism. See you then.